it took about 8 years to write the book, and I travelled quite a bit in that time, but both for my work in Cambodia and also I went to Greece a couple of times to find out more about the early democracy there. So I met a lot of people on planes, trains, and buses and things, and they, how you are on a plane, say, you'll talk to the person next to you. What do you do, and what do you do? And I always said I was writing a book on democracy, and they said, "What sort of book?" And I told them, and everybody said, "Sounds like a great idea. Sounds really, really great, but it's never going to happen." So, and there must have been hundreds of people over that 8 years that said this at one time or another. So we've got and if they're a sample of the population at large, we have a population that wants all these reforms, but simultaneously doesn't think they're possible. So it's a kind
Yeah.
of strange little logjam we're in there. And if we can just break that, I think we'll be okay. One of the practical means, probably the best form of democracy of all, we've talked about direct, but there's a deliberative democracy is probably the most powerful form there is. It's a bit counterintuitive. Started with the Greeks, as did direct. You pick 40 people at random off the voting roll, and you put them in a room, and you fund them, and you give them tea and coffee and food, and you pay them. And they're there for as long as it takes to solve the question of, let's say, the rates for the local municipality on the land, or the local policy on stray dogs, and it goes right up. You can do it locally, and probably that's where it might start. It goes right up through provincial and federal levels. In Mongolia, for example, they've done this to write a constitution. So it can operate on every level. But I think that may be one way that this starts, is by people putting forward these ideas to have randomly selected people. Again, it sounds counterintuitive, but in practice it works like a dream.
Well, it's like jury duty, but instead of jury duty, you would have like, civics duty, right? It's a different type of jury duty.
Yeah, it is. And indeed, they both started at the same place in classical era Athens. The jury there did decide on things like that, and local issues, but they also did trials. They could do anything, very flexible, and no judges and no lawyers, incidentally. Yeah. Just the jurors.
Normal people. Yeah.
Yeah, just normal
That's
people.
not a bad idea to expand jury duty.
Yeah, to governance rather than just crime and what have you. Yeah.
Right.
The thing is about all this that we can actually do this. It's, for one thing, it's been done before in Athens, and deliberative democracy now. You've got a professor in the US, James Fishkin, who's setting up deliberative democracy sessions, or what have you, around the planet. Even in rural China, he's done it, where locals vote on stuff and thrash out differences. Conservatives and liberals get to sit down in the same room for a few days and realise that the other side is not inhuman monsters after all. They actually do have a case. And then making a decision, a consensus decision at the end of it. Everyone loves it. The public often, in some places, the public follows us on TV. They love it. So we actually have this already. We're just not doing it widely enough. It needs to be expanded. That's part of the program I'm advocating. And there's also the matter of the Stone Age. If you take the human timeline, or let's say Homo sapiens, it's about 300,000 years. It's only in the last 10,000 that we've been settled down in, growing food and living in villages and towns and cities and so on. Most of that time we've been hunter-gatherers in bands, not even large tribes, just bands of 30, 50 or 100 or something. And they were egalitarian. And the egalitarian, and they were all about sharing and cooperation. Competition, ego, someone trying to be the leader, that was a matter for shame and usually punishment. You were exiled if you tried to pull a stunt like that, tried to be the alpha male. Humans don't do the alpha male thing. That's chimps and other great apes. Humans actually mastered cooperation, and that's probably an evolved impulse now. It's not something we've been taught or forced to do. It's natural to us. So cooperating and having equality in terms of political power, I don't get into equality in wealth. I'm not into confiscating wealth or anything like that. But wealth should live in its own domain, and politics and political power and decision making should be in its domain. And our goal now is to relocate it to its separate domain so that one isn't contaminating the other.
Yeah.
And it's human nature. We're working on human nature. It shouldn't be that hard. What we're doing now is actually contra to human nature. We don't have tyrants as Homo sapiens. We don't have great leaders. We do have excellence, where a great hunter in the tribe or the band or a great dancer or something like that is given their due and given respect, but they're never made the leader. The idea that these groups had leaders is fictitious, I think, for the most part. They were egalitarian. That's how we need to be with our politics. And it's interesting that you've got MAGA saying that oligarchs and big money controls politics and has for years, and we've got to break that. And you've got the left has been saying that since the 1930s, and yet we're still persuaded that the other side is the problem. It's a very strange situation.
That's why it's at times hopeless, right? Is because when I see Democrats suddenly changing their whole narrative on things they've always advocated, like against big pharma, and now they're suddenly championing big pharma and saying, "How dare you try to go after big pharma?" I mean, it just goes to show how we are operating with lizard brains when it comes to the other side. Anything the other side says, I'm just automatically against because I just hate them. They're evil. So if they're saying it, it must be bad. And that is, I think, going to be the largest challenge. And then, besides that, the second largest challenge is going to be, how do we even implement this? I think the bigger challenge is getting people to not look at each other like evil and not wanting to become tyrannical and take over, because I can't let the other side, because if they do, then evil will ensue. You've got to get over that first, I think, before you can even get to the point of, okay, now how do we do this revolution in some way, be it violently or non-violently or politically or however we do it, so that we can then implement this new system. You first have to get rid of that hatred for each other, because tyrants will just come out of that.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's the Greeks believed that the system made the citizen, but they were also into arete, or excellence, and we've got to work on both as well. It's an individual journey, withdrawing our projections and our irrational loathings of the other side. That's very much the way it is, but we're also not going to get across the line without good architecture. We need both.
Yeah.
And probably we need a personal journey before we can start on the other one. I think you're right.
People have to admit that there's a big problem and that we all want that same problem fixed. And that's got to be the consensus.
Yeah. I mean, the solution's kind of waiting for us. You could almost see it over the horizon. It's very close. This stuff is built into human nature. It's been done before in other societies. It's being done now to some extent, say in Switzerland, and with the deliberative democracy forums that are springing up around the world. So it's not like some strange foreign thing. And plus, everyone I've met on an aeroplane in a decade has said it's a great idea, even if they've also added it won't happen. So we're on the cusp of some quite big change, I think. I think 2024 was huge, a huge year. I don't know what this year is going to be like.